So DevOps is simply the merging of dev and ops, like the name says. It's empowering your developers to more simply ship their software. Much like all the rest of these terms, it's not really a thing. It's a whole series of things that had already been happening that someone's like, oh, hey, let's slap a name on this so we can better talk about it. Some of the later questions about ops versus development, there are plenty who argue if you are talking about those two separate things, you're not actually doing DevOps. So it is a definition that's up in the air of whether it means just continuous development, more easily enabling anyone on the dev team to deploy and manage their own software, or it means entirely merging them so the dev team is responsible for the full operation of their software. Where that line goes varies by organization and by who you ask. But in general, it's simply what it sounds like, the merging of development and ops in the modern world, which has a lot to do with the cloud, of why it started to become a thing where any single developer in a day could push up an entirely new stack. So now what do they need to know to do that right within your organizational concerns?
Good.
So I'm probably not going to give a definition because I think those can be a little bit overdone. I'm going to tell a couple of stories. So in fall of 2009, when I was starting cloud scaling, we were doing consulting for a number of companies, and one of them is this small healthcare provider called Kaiser Permanente. Kaiser was in the throes of trying to figure out their private cloud strategy, and at one point, they went dark for 2 to 3 weeks. The entire IT leadership team just disappeared. And when they got back, I said, what happened? Where did you go? And they basically said, well, we had 3 site outages at kp.org in 1 month's time, and we had to go sort of deal with that. And the fundamental problem there was that kp.org was being run in the traditional enterprise manner, which is you had the storage guys, you had the server guys, you had the network guys, and nobody had complete responsibility for site uptime. And that was a huge problem. kp.org is a cornerstone of Kaiser's business. And when we engage with enterprises today, one of the things that I always see is this horrible disconnect between the line of business and the application developers and the IT and operators and infrastructure staff. These guys over here are doing everything they can to run fast and make the business be more successful, to bring new applications to market, new initiatives. These guys are over here just trying to manage down risk. And what winds up happening is that you've got this dysfunctional relationship. You get the application developers, a line of business, go to the infrastructure guys and say, look, we need this new infrastructure for our app. Here's our list of requirements. It's huge. The infrastructure guys come back and say, well, we can do that, but it's $10 million in 18 months. And the problem is that the line of business guys don't care about that. So they go to Amazon Web Services and they get this much of their wish list, but they get to go immediately. Because the reality of the situation is that we're moving into a world where the speed of the enterprise matters more than anything else. According to one of the Forrester analysts that I love to quote, Craig LeClaire, he said, over the last 10 years, 70% of the Fortune 1000 has been turned over because of their inability to adapt to change. Adapting to change is now a absolute critical existential question for enterprises of all sizes, and DevOps, I think, is the cornerstone of enabling that. It's really about breaking down the barrier between the line of business and the application developers and the infrastructure folks so that both teams can be successful. And there are examples of this in the wild, like Fidelity, and I'd be happy to talk about that later, but I don't want to bogart the mic.